Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and today we're going to talk about the bargains. That's right, because everybody likes free stuff. Don't pretend like you don't. Today we're going to go through 10 draft day bargains. These are guys going past the post 250 ADP in most leagues, and we're going to talk about why you should be looking at adding them, not just in necessarily your deeper leagues, but some of the more shallow ones as well. Before we get to those names, Welsh, it's great to see you here on this lovely Monday morning, and it's great to see that you made it through the weekend of all the WBC healthy. That's all I'm happy about.
See, point for you. You got the WBC joke in first. I was sitting here contemplating, where's the WBC joke? No pitches to the wrist, no missed time or anything like that. Joey and I are always here, regardless of what you might see in the WBC and the players not being there for your fantasy. Also, a slight little lean to why, if possible, draft in the final weekend, because there's a lot of people that are hurting right now,
especially WBC years, especially those. I'm glad you said that, because I haven't heard anybody really talk enough about that, and I'm so glad that you said it. But this is a good lesson. The years where WBC is going on, you better take a little bit more care with your drafts. And I know it's fun. I know you're excited, you want to draft, but sometimes these injuries happen, and we got to talk about Jose Altuve too. He's going to miss 8 to 10 weeks with this broken thumb. It was a great game. Can I just start by saying it? It was an absolutely phenomenal baseball game. The energy in the building was electric. One of the more entertaining games we've seen in the last 5 years, I would say, period. World Series, otherwise, doesn't matter. It was awesome.
Probably the game of the tournament. I mean, we'll see what happens in the championship game, or we'll see what happens with Japan and Mexico.
But it was great.
Yeah, the grand slam by Trey Turner to be able to come back is a moment.
Well, they got up, and then Venezuela came back, and they were all fired up, and then Turner hits the grand slam, and all that stuff happening. And I just want to, I recognize how great the WBC is for baseball. And it is. I love it. You love it. We're wagering on it. I mean, it's a good time. America's still alive. Welsh and I are very happy.
During WBC, by the way. It's been very good.
I think the point is that, you want to have it. It is important. I saw an incredible statistic, Welsh, that 1 million plus people attended WBC in the pool play, where all the different countries were hosting in this very short period. 1 million plus people, attendees. The Oakland Athletics last year for 81 games drew 788,000. So it is great for baseball. It's great for the globalization of the game. And when they pushed the World Cup in Qatar, because it was so hot into the fall, a lot of people were skeptical that it would work. And I think it flourished in the fall. And there's precedence for, I remember back in the day as a kid, Ken Griffey Jr. and all these all-stars would go off in November, December, and go play a round of games in Japan. Like, why can't we do it in November just to play it a little safer? Like, I think we can. I think that conversation has to happen, Welsh, because now Altuve, from a fantasy standpoint, you have to knock him down significantly in your rankings, and second base was already positioned that was kind of hurting anyway.
Well, knock it down in your rankings is saying it lightly, because in the season he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks, and obviously, what is the actual recovery return time going to look like? So you're at best case scenario saying maybe June you're going to get him, and like you said, it's a bad position. I actually kind of hate it too, because me, I'm a huge Jazz Chisholm guy. And Altuve is this great bridge because people will always take him first, maybe Simeon, and this is just one less. And like you said, the position sucks so much. There's even some back end injury stuff here that it's like there's 5 great guys to take. Jorge Polanco is dealing with an injury that he might miss some early parts of the season. That's another guy off the table. Like, sometimes we make a little too much about a position stinking. Not second base, not in 2023.
It's a good point. And also Yoan Moncada dealing with a rib injury, Arenado dealing with a hand injury. Look, we all know the Edwin Diaz plight of last year. I love the WBC. I'm not talking ill about it. And I do think that you are going to see as some of these more massive deals get handed out here, when Shohei Ohtani makes $500 million, and he's going to make $500 million guaranteed money. I know they can't necessarily legally tell them not to do it because it's a Major League Baseball event. Well, but I wonder if there's going to be some handshake agreements on the back end, Welsh, where they say to guys like Ohtani, look, we're paying you $500 million. You've got to, I know you love your country. I know this is a great event, but if it's going to be in the spring, you might have to just pass on it. I could see that happening as time goes on.
It'll be interesting to see if that's actually something that is going to be a problem, because there's a lot of communication with players and teams leading up to this. If you remember, Clayton Kershaw was supposed to pitch with Team USA, who would be the best pitcher on Team USA right now, but they couldn't get that insurance policy set and they just kind of moved on from it. If any teams are really worried, I just don't think a player's going to throw up a major stink. There are plenty of players that bowed out because they wanted to focus on being with their team and they wanted to focus on getting ready. Corey Senga did that. The Corey Senga was actually interviewed about that, and he just said that he needed to be here to get set for the Mets. It tends to kind of be something where it's like these guys are in limbo. You know, you've been in the majors for a little while. You've kind of, I mean, like Trout, you hate to say it, like, you know, been into playoffs, hasn't really accomplished a whole lot outside of like individual statistics. And this like kind of means quite a bit more. And I say that, and like Mookie Betts is like, you know, World Series and blah, blah, blah. And this was a huge deal to him. I just don't know if it'll become contractual, but the amount of injuries is definitely making it a lot louder that, yeah, it might be.
Look, man, I think the World Cup kind of proved that, you know, you could do something October, November and have it be hot and people will watch. I know you don't want to conflict with the World Series. Obviously, it would have to be after that. But I think it could work. I really do. And I think it's a good event. I think it's a great event. So I am pro WBC. A question for you, too, as we look now in the rankings. Drafting Altuve, I would take Andres Jimenez ahead of him, correct? You would, too?
Easy.
Okay, Tommy Edman, you would take ahead of him, correct?
Oh, yeah.
All right, when we get to Jorge Polanco, Gleyber Torres, would you take those guys ahead of Altuve right now?
Not Polanco, because Polanco's going in injured. Right. Who's the other guy?
Gleyber Torres, Brandon Lau. Those are the names at second base right there.
I think Altuve moves at best to the like right in front of the top 100. You know, like Gleyber Torres and them aren't really inside the top 100.
Torres is at 110. So
yeah,
that's
like
Edman
like the
cutoff.
Edman and Jimenez are like top 80. I think he's somewhere between like 80 and 100, but there's just more work you have to do. I mean, personally, like that's where I think he has to rank, because he will come back and he'll still be great, but he's just not going to be a really drafted target for me. I've kind of moved on as I played fantasy over years of like taking this guy that I can sit on for 2 months and try to get extra value out of him. Maybe you can do it. You know, maybe his replacement.
I would take like a Luis Arraez or a Ketel Marte later. I would take a discount if I got a good one on Altuve, and I would, because the position's bad, I'm more willing to take the risk on Altuve as long as it's not too much risk. Like you said, if it's going outside the top 100, then I think you could back it up for 2 months and still be okay and get it done.
I really like the Ketel Marte thing. I like taking Altuve if you can get him like, you know, 90 to 110, something like that, and then take Ketel Marte, you know, 4 or 5 rounds later. I think that's like a really good pairing to go with him. And if Ketel Marte does kind of break out when Altuve comes back, you're perfect.
There you go. Speaking of perfect, you know what's perfect? Fantasy baseball and friendship. And on this coming Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fantasy Pros YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasypros, from 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern, we are going to have the Fantasy Fest for MLB. We've got Eno Saris, we've got Craig Mish, we've got Nick Pollock, Paul Sporer, Frank Stamfel, a whole host of friends. Chris Meany is going to join us. So you're going to be locked into this. You're going to want to hang out with us. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and click that little bell till it goes ding for notifications. It's this coming Wednesday, 3/22. We're going to be here for you talking baseball. So make sure you're part of that. We want you in there live. We'll take your questions. We'll take your insults, all of those things, but you can only do it at the YouTube channel, and you can always watch it back. But watching it live is fun. So we'd love for you to join us live anytime or the entire time. Again, 1 to 5 Eastern this coming Wednesday. So don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where all the cool kids are hanging out. Welsh, let's get to the names here, and let's start here with some of the players outside of the top 250. These are the bargain basement guys that we think can have a big impact in 2023. Who is the first guy on your list?
So this guy signed a little bit late, and he signed over with the White Sox. Actually, just talking about them and all the injuries they're dealing with, I continuously look at Elvis Andrus, and I see a late deal. We just talked about second base. Gonna qualify at second base. That is where they're planning to play him. So as long as Tim Anderson doesn't have his annual injury happen really early on and he moves over to shortstop, Elvis Andrus is also going to get that second base qualification. By the way, we're talking about all this like bad second base stuff. There are those sneaky guys, Miguel Vargas and Elvis Andrus, 2 players that are going to acquire in-season second base eligibility. But Andrus came on with this team last year, 17 homers, 18 stolen bases in around 150 games, but he did the brunt of it once he was traded. He didn't do it with Oakland. BatX projections have him at 10-14 in only 120 games while hitting 252. And if he moves up in this lineup, those run totals should definitely be higher than what are on projection. So if you want to play a little bit higher and you can get to 15-20 outside the top 300, He's a smashing draft day bargain, and it's a 320 ADP. I'm looking at Elvis Andrus, not just in like my deep formats, but anytime I have a little bit of weakness in the middle infield, he's a target of mine, especially for stolen bases. We know he can hit some homers, and overall, this is a team where he could move up the lineup. Good success last year. Elvis Andrus, he's a draft day bargain for me.
Yeah, 320. Again, free stuff. Let's get to the first guy on my list, Trey Mancini. Look, Trey Mancini has had a tough couple years, all right? First dealing with the cancer situation, to say the least. Then he finally comes back, has a decent year in 2021. And what happens in 2022? They move the fences on him, right? And all of a sudden, left field goes way, way out there, almost into the water in Baltimore. And it affected him. He then got traded to Houston. So, having to move around, all those things. He is settling into the Chicago Cubs situation here, which is a much better ballpark factor for Trey Mancini. And Trey Mancini is a player that at his peak gave you a season in 2019 of 35 home runs, 97 RBI, 106 runs scored, hit 291. He's hit 290 more than once in his career. So I'm not saying he's going to go up to 290. I'm saying he's probably going to be somewhere in that 250, 260 range, but I think the power could certainly come back. He's years now removed from all the treatments he's had, and I'm sure physically it's taken a toll on him, not to mention the mental side, not to mention having to get traded and move and all those things. So now he settled into a situation in Chicago where Welsh, I don't know if there's a lot of guys at 268 overall that have the potential for a 30 home run season, but Trey Mancini has that. Not to mention he qualifies at two spots, outfield and first base, both of which are lame as hell this year. We've talked about it ad nauseum on the show. So he's got dual eligibility, power upside. He's super cheap. I'm taking a chance on Trey Mancini, Welsh. I'm just going to do it. Who's next on your list here of guys who are draft day bargains?
Coming in at number 4 for me, I really didn't actually intend to have some trend of the post Jose Altuve world or anything like that, but I do have another second baseman on this list because I like getting one of the, if you can tell, like I like getting Jazz Chisholm, but later on, I want to pair with another guy, and there's some really good cheap middle infield players and some players that qualify at second base. One of those players being Kolten Wong. Kolten Wong last year, 15 homers, 17 stolen bases, hitting 251. This year, Bat X projections have him at almost 20 stolen bases. As a matter of fact, the normal Bat has him at 20 stolen bases with 13 homers in just 126 games. Kind of just like we talked about with the White Sox situation with Andrus, if he's going to be hitting a high point in this lineup, it's going to work out really well for him. Every single year, he sneaks into these numbers. I think he can push 70, 60, 70, 55. RBIs are going to be kind of like a wash for him, right? But he might be a really solid 4-category player, or at least 3.5, and you're getting him actually at 251. I almost cheated on this one. It was right at 251, but he is
let it slide. It's fine.
Draft day target, not just a bargain, but he's a draft day bargain target for me in every format that I can get, because like the hopefulness we have with Elvis Andrus, maybe he can get to 15, 20. Kolten Wong is almost already there projected. Like I said, 11 and 19 on the Bat X in 126 game. A full season should get you good runs, good stolen bases, and pretty solid batting average and run totals from a player that is post 250 at a not great position. Kolten Wong is a must, and he's a great draft day bargain.
I love that he's at the top of that lineup, and I think this is one of those players that's going to benefit from the new rules, the bigger bases, the time you can only throw over twice without throwing a ball. I think all of those little factors here in these rules changes, I think, affect more so these guys in the middling stolen base world than necessarily.
I was just about to say
guys.
that, Joe. I was just about to say, like, there's a lot of speculation overall, like who is the biggest beneficiaries. I tend to think and kind of see it is a little bit more of the top end, but Kolten Wong straddles that line between like the upper tier of middle guys to the lower tier of high stolen base guys. And, the projections as far as like where his stolen bases are, which I find really fascinating, is the BATX projections would be the third most of his entire career. So think about how projections just work in general.
That feels right to me, though.
He has not stolen over 19 bases since 2019, yet the projections have him in 120 games going higher. So you can see, in effect, projections are already starting to build in these new rules that should affect him in a really good, positive way.
It's guys like that have good speed, but not always necessarily the best base stealing ability, where now you got to realize you throw over twice, that third time now, you can have that extra step. The base you're going to is 3 inches closer. Not to mention, it's harder to get picked off because the base you're going back to, is a little bit bigger. There's a little bit more room to get back there. So there's a lot of factors in there. And I think it's more these middle of the road guys that I think people aren't paying enough attention to that might really spike in stolen bases. So I love this pick. Let's get to my number 4 here at 285, Garrett Whitlock. That's right. I think we had, I don't remember which of the pitching gurus we had now. They're all blending together, which, by the way, speaking of pitching gurus, tomorrow's show, Alex Fast, Nick Pollock, the great pitching debate 2023 is back again. By popular demand, every year we have the two of them on to argue. It's going to be glorious. I can't wait for it. But Garrett Whitlock last year in 78 innings between the bullpen and starting pitching, 82 strikeouts, 15 walks. The guy has excellent control. He's a 3.45 ERA with a 1.02 whip. He qualifies like Mancini in more than one spot. Qualifies at starting pitcher and reliever. When you have mandatory RP spots in your lineup, it's really important that you have some guys like this, especially if you're in daily transaction leagues. You've got the Mariners closer and they take a day off there, then you have Garrett Whitlock who's starting. You could throw him into that lineup. It gives you so much flexibility. It gives you coverage. And I think Whitlock is just destined to be in the starting rotation this year. Like, they just have no choice. That's what it's going to be. And I think he is ready for that change. The Boston Red Sox are not a great team. That's why you're getting the 281 discount. But at the end of the day, once again, I'm looking at a pitcher who, can he give me 130 innings this year? Can he give me 140 strikeouts? I think the answer is yes. And can that ERA be under 4 in that 3.7 range maybe? I think all the answers are yes. I think that's a tremendous value at 281, especially with the dual eligibility factor. Let's get to your number 3 guy on the bargain basement list. And this is a guy you've mentioned before, but I think he bears mentioning again because he's had a good spring.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We haven't talked about him in a little bit, but Hayden Wesneski with a 298 ADP with the Cubs. Funny enough, about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago or so, even when we were and I brought him up one time before, he didn't have any lock set rotation spot as far according to Roster Resource. That has now changed. Wesneski has had a pretty good spring. 4 games in, he struck out 17 over 12, ERA at 3, whip is right around 1, which is definitely what you like to see. 9K per 9 last year with a 2.18 ERA. And he's also just had a really solid spring overall, even when the results haven't quite been there. He's been smacking the zones a whole bunch. And this is something that I really want to see with him, because I think the K numbers can go up the more that he's going to be able to pitch inside the strike zone and pitch at batters. Last year, he had an under 2 walk per 9. So watch out if he increases at all. If we see an increase in his K per 9 with those low walk numbers as well, he's really going to be able to teeter some very, very valuable SP numbers. I mean, I think SP 50 is going to be an easy way to look at him, and he's almost got a 300 ADP. So it's not the best team in the world, but they're going to want to give him the full go coming off of a really, really fantastic spring. And I'm really excited to see what the results are going to end up being, because like I said, this spring, every time he pitches across the zone, a little bit of sweeper action. I'm very excited about Wesneski, especially with a 298 ADP.
All right, next guy on my list here, number 3, 310 ADP, Kenta Maeda. And this is a little bit of a reach. I know he's coming back from Tommy John. I get that. The Twins need him, though. They don't need a 5th starter for quite some time. That's the whole thing. You always be patient with guys who are 5th starters, because Kenta Maeda wasn't going to go out there and throw 200 innings this year. Okay, that's not Kenta Maeda anyway. But can you get Kenta Maeda's velocity going? Can you get him up and running here? I know the other day he gave up a couple home runs, but it was in a game against the Braves. Guys like Ozzie Albies and Marcelo Ozuna hitting home runs off you. Okay, but more to the point, he did strike out 5 guys, walk 2 in that. And that's more to me what I want to see. It's not the home runs. It's getting the feel back for pitching. I think this Twins team is very good. They're going to be competitive in that American League Central. And Kenta Maeda, as the 5th starter on a good team, can be very valuable for you, especially in a deeper league. If for some reason they end up moving him to the bullpen, if some reason things happen, you can always cut him. All these guys we're talking about are guys you're taking shots on. If they don't perform well, the great thing about the dollar store, Welsh, is this. You can get something from the dollar store, and you could say, this is great, and you use it every day, and it's awesome. You say, what an incredible value. Or you can get something from the dollar store, and it breaks later that afternoon. You have kids, you know what I'm talking about. And you go, well, it was only from the dollar store, and you throw it away. That's the beauty of the guys we're talking about. But Kenta Maeda has upside. Kenta Maeda has had runs of being a very good starting pitcher in this league, and I think this situation here bears witness. Continue to watch him in the next start here coming up, because Kenta Maeda has the upside to be a pretty good I would say, matchup play starting pitcher in baseball. And in the deeper these leagues are, we know the pitching can be a problem. I don't know how much you're going to get out of him in April, but can you get 4 or 5 months out of him? And I think the answer might be yes. So again, dollar store shopping, the Dollar General, Kenta Maeda just might get the job done. Before we get to the top two guys, that's right, tchotchkes. But you know, and I know, you can go and get some really quality stuff at some of those dollar stores sometimes, and it lasts forever. And sometimes it doesn't last on the way home.
Yeah, or a day, or an hour. Yeah.
or 10 minutes. Before we get going to the top two guys on our list, don't forget, everybody, when you have all of your drafts going on this coming weekend, have us in there with you. We want to be there for you. And we can, if you're using the cheat sheets at fantasypros.com/draftwizard, and you can put some of these guys who are higher on our specific ranks than probably some other people's, use the cheat sheets. You get that kind of bonus because you'll see those guys pop up and you'll be able to make those draft moves. So with the cheat sheet creator, you can easily access expert rankings, projections, and customize your cheat sheets to fit your league settings with your favorite cross-section or experts, or just the Welsh. If you just want the Welsh, you can just have the Welsh too, but you can only do it at fantasypros.com.
I just updated mine
after
on
the Altuve injury.
Friday night, I think. So I haven't done the Altuve injury. I will do that, but yes. Friday night, all new updated ranks.
Sunday morning, I just updated mine. So we're here for you, baby. fantasypros.com/draftwizard, or just download the app. And don't forget, you can go premium as well, fantasypros.com/premium, to get all the bells and whistles there. But use the cheat sheet creator with the Draft Wizard. It's great stuff. Who else could be great stuff? Who is number 2 for you, Welsh, on these post 250?
Well, this guy has a Fantasy Pros ADP of over 400, but the helium is rising, my friends. And if you're going to get him, you're going to have to get him a lot higher, but he's still a bargain regardless. It's Clarke Schmidt with the New York Yankees. Now, there's always some back-end rotation conversations about who's going to be able to maintain what, but Clarke Schmidt is one of those guys that might be the answer to all of those questions. Clarke Schmidt this offseason has added a cutter to his arsenal. And really what he did, and I think we see this with like a lot of pitchers nowadays, is he's taken that slider that he threw, and I think he's broken it apart, and he's turned the slider into what I believe is more of a sweeper, which is kind of like a league-wide thing. And then he's added a cutter, and the cutter has had ridiculous results, over 2,600 RPM. As far as spring training as he's been learning this pitch, the ERA has been inflated, but check this out. ERA in spring, 4.63. His whip, 0.69. Those both don't add up. He's also had 17 strikeouts in just under 12 innings pitched so far this spring. The new repertoire is a really, really interesting addition to a guy that already has just a full arsenal of pitches. And that cutter really has the potential to be devastating. And the overall adjustment of the slider as well. So Clarke Schmidt is one of those players to keep an eye on. He has a 404 Fantasy Pros ADP, but like I said, he is moving up. Take a Yankees pitcher, take a guy who's going to get you some free wins as well. And if he stays in that rotation all season, this might be a league winner at this point. Wow. If not, take the opportunity while guys like Carlos Rodon and whatnot are going to miss time, and take that opportunity to get those starts out of him. And maybe you're going to piece together a pretty solid season. He is definitely a bargain for this draft season.
He is. He's a bargain. He's been a guy that we've been looking to for the last couple of years. He's come up through the organization. And it's not like Rodon's going to be the only guy to get hurt for the Yankees. I mean everybody gets hurt nowadays. So having a guy like that on a good team, it's similar to another guy I'm going to talk about in a second there. You want these guys that are on the peripheral of rotations who could get 15 to 20 starts, because that's going to add up at the end of the day for you in fantasy. My number 2 guy is Jared Walsh at 331, the first baseman for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Let's go back in the Wayback Machine, shall we, Walsh? Let's take a little trip down memory lane. The 2020 shortened pandemic season, 9 home runs, hit 293 over 32 games. Very short sample size, but it got everybody very encouraged. And if you were encouraged by Jared Walsh, then you had a really good time in 2021, because he had 29 bombs. He drove in 98 runs. He had 277. Let me say that again. 29 home runs, 98 ribbies, 277 batting average. Okay. He's going at ADP 316. Oh, hell yeah. And I feel like Stone Cold Steve Austin just hit me with a stunner, because I can't imagine a player with this kind of potential being where he is right now. And I understand why. Last year was a dreadful season, 118 dreadful games. He had just 15 bombs, 213 batting average, but he had that thoracic outlet syndrome, which has killed tons of careers, but more specifically pitchers. We haven't seen a lot of hitters struggle with this in terms of long term, but we have seen it. We did that show, I think, last year. We went down the list of all the pitchers with thoracic outlet syndrome, and none of them ever returned to what they
Not
were.
good.
It's a horrible thing. Hitting is a little different. So I'm curious to see, and I'm a buyer once again at first base, just like Mancini. It's dreadful. You're looking for help at the corners. Why not take a shot on Jared Walsh in a deeper league? He is absolutely free. And there's very few guys outside of the top 300, just like I said, Mancini outside of 250, about outside of top 320, because he's at 331 right now, that have an upside of a 30 home run season. Power's hard to find. Go take a look. Keep an eye on Jared Walsh, because I think that's a guy that will be added very quickly to a lot of rosters in the early going. If he gets off to a good April, you'll be seeing him as one of the most added guys in baseball, but instead of adding him, just draft him instead. Welsh, what do you think about Walsh? I'm curious, because that thoracic outlet syndrome has crushed a lot of major league careers in the last few years.
I think him being in this version of this show is the best way to do it, because I don't know what to think of him. I don't know how to really approach him. But if you do want to start looking at players that have ADPs outside the top 300, Jared Walsh has to be top 3 or 4 of the biggest seasons behind them as well, with really kind of unknown questions in front. I don't think I've drafted Jared Walsh in a whole lot of spots, but I will tell you, if I am trying to reach a little bit for some of that big power boost to come back, he would be one of those guys. Because also, I don't think this is like a outfield situation where they're immediately, I just don't know if the replacements are already right there for them. I think they're stuck with Jared Walsh for the foreseeable future here. But yeah, I definitely buy into it. I like the logic of this, because if you can get that COVID season come back right around there, Jared Walsh is going to be huge, 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 huge.
All right, let's get to your number one guy here, Welsh. This is a guy that just found a new home, and I think this is a great one because a lot of people probably just missed that signing over the weekend.
Yeah, and this might like jolt a lot of people, but if you're talking about draft day bargains, how about the leadoff hitter for the Colorado Rockies? Yes, Jurickson Profar, who was just playing with the Netherlands, I believe it was, has signed an $8 million deal with the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies always do this. They sign like goofy guys when they have young players. They sign Mike Moustakas. You could question if both of them are going to make the roster, but Profar gets a big incentive based deal where there's a lot of like playing time and stats that are attached to this. And they've already announced that he's going to play left field and he's going to lead off for this team. And that is what makes me jump out, where Profar has a 427 ADP. Guess what? Of all the players that we're talking about here, mine and Joe's, this guy's the lowest ADP because people forgot he exists. It will change, of course, but Colorado just does wonders for guys like this. He had 15 homers with 5 stolen bases last year with the Padres. His batting average projection-wise is still in the 240s. Projections don't really know what to do with him as far as stats. They've got him under 100 games, 8 homers, 6 stolen bases, but a full season on that, if you wanted to kind of, project a little bit, 15-15 really seems like it is like really right there for us. And it's Colorado. That's the other thing that I keep focusing on. This is Colorado leadoff hitter, Jurickson Profar. Colorado leadoff hitter outside the top 400 is stupid. He might be one of the best draft day bargains, but it's probably not going to last too much longer.
He's going to be buried on every site ADP. So he's one of these guys, like when you start your draft, I didn't know Welsh does this, but I do this, where before I even start a draft, I just go through my list of my guys, quote unquote, and I just find them all and stick them in the queue. So I can have a well-crafted strategy later on of when I'm going to take those guys, because people just flat out won't even see them sometimes. And these guys are the poster children for that. My number one is in the 400s, not quite 427, but he's 406. It's David Peterson. Again, dual eligibility, SPRP in a lot of leagues. The New York Mets. The Mets are talking about even going to a 6-man rotation because McGill and Peterson have been pretty much neck and neck here. Peterson was decent on his weekend start here. To me, Peterson always has the edge over McGill because you want that lefty in the rotation. That, to me, is the bigger advantage. You want to change it up. You don't want all right-handed starting pitching in there. So I think having that lefty is a good thing. I think they play 8 games to open the season in a row or something crazy like that. So having a 6-man rotation might not be crazy. So depending on how McGill or Peterson fare in those first starts or so, that could change the calculus. I like Peterson more anyway. No No knock on Tyler the Terrible, as we like to call him here on the show. McGill is probably going to get some moments as well, but there's a lot of age in this Mets rotation. And it didn't take very long for Jose Quintana or somebody else to get hurt. And here we are entering the season. And Peterson, if you go back and look at last year's stats, 126 strikeouts and 105 innings. Now, that's between the bullpen and starting pitching, but still a 3.83 ERA. At times, the walks, he could struggle a little bit with the control, but he's a young lefty. They typically tend to do that anyway. David Peterson's a guy that I think is continuing on the upside. If I was another team looking for trades, I would be looking at David Peterson and taking him away from the New York Mets and putting him in my rotation long-term, because I think this kid has a lot of potential. So Peterson, to me, is one of these guys, has the potential to make 15 to 20 starts this year without necessarily just Quintana's injury, because the age of Verlander, the age of Scherzer, we'd be foolish not to think there's going to be some missed time in there. Not to mention, we're going to have one guy who's already out, and Carlos Carrasco hasn't been the picture of health either, unfortunately, in the last 5 years. So to me, Peterson is one of those must-grab guys. I've been talking about him since what, February?
You have.
And, it didn't take long for him to be relevant, but ADP hasn't caught up. Somehow it is yet to catch up, but you better catch up to all these guys. Here are the top 5 from Welsh. Elvis Andrus at 320, Kolten Wong at 251, Hayden Wesneski at 298. Is it Wesneski or Wesneski? I keep hearing different people say different things. I'm going to say Wesneski because that's the way it sounds. I'm sure somebody on YouTube in the comments will correct me. They're very good at that. Clarke Schmidt at 404, Jurickson Profar at 427. That is his number 1. My top 5, Trey Mancini at 269, Garrett Whitlock at 285, Kenta Maeda at 310, Jared Walsh at 331, and David Peterson of the New York Mets at 406. Who are your favorite draft day bargains? I want to know. Drop your names right there below in the comments on the YouTube and let us know who some of your guys that you're grabbing at late rounds that you feel really good about that could really have an impact in your 2023 fantasy leagues. Or if you just want to complain about the fact that you drafted Jose Altuve on Saturday morning and then he got hurt Saturday night, you can complain about that too. This is a safe space for your rage. We welcome that here. God knows I've got enough of it to share. Oh yeah. Well, leading off is like my rage place. It's like I just, on a weekly basis, there's something that just, pushes me over the edge, which by the way, that's starting pretty soon too. A little leading off action for you right around the corner.
When are we starting?
We got to go check our schedules, but make sure you lock in your schedule. Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern. Fantasy Fest, the Festival of Fantasy Baseball Friendship, is here for you with an all-star cast. So all your questions answered. We got a great list of people. We got MLB Insider Craig Mish joining us. We've got Eno Saris again, Frank Stamfel, Nick Pollock, Paul Sporer, Chris Meany. The list goes on. And you, sweet, we want you to join us as well. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For the Welsh, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. Stay healthy out there, please. WBC people.